Those of you familiar with my channel know that it's not like I do a lot of restorations, if any. So that means it's time for me to do a restoration. Before I started doing these YouTube videos, for probably about a month or 6 weeks or so before that, I did some cars to get started and posted pictures on Instagram, and I did a couple minis. And there's just something about doing the little minis that I like. And so I thought, well, let me do this one and do a YouTube video. So I had this little beat to hell Corgi Junior WhizzWheels B.V.R.T. Vita-Min 1300 Mini Cooper S. Yeah, I'm reading that off the bottom. So I had this poor little guy beat to hell, stickers coming off of it. Love the color. So I thought this would be a good one for me to do a restoration on. So I took it apart, and I don't have the video, but you see there's a slot at the back, and there's a matching slot at the front. And I didn't get the video of me taking it apart, but there aren't posts. They're metal tabs, I guess you'd call them, metal strips sticking out of the body that are then like split in the middle. Kind of think like a forked tongue kind of thing. It's like the metal spread apart, and that's what keeps the base on the body. And everything about this little guy was weird. Even the wheels, the way they're held on, it's like there's an axle rod that runs basically from the front of the car to the back of the car, and then that's holding down the actual axle rods in place. And it's just a bizarre little thing. But threw it in the stripper, stripped it, polished it up, threw the base in. Can't even think of the solution now off the top of my head, but threw it in the usual thing to try and clean up the base, cleaned up the body, and then you see I hit it with the Duplicolor metal cast paint. I did that straight over the metal. I didn't use that base coat like I used to. Well, like I have before. Not saying I won't use it again, because it gives you a great base. But then I lost my mind, and I thought, okay, I don't want to spray this with clear because I've had problems recently with paint. And this little turd would fit perfectly in that bottle of gauzy. So, yeah, to get the clear coat, I dunked it. I dunked it in the gauzy. The gauzy, for those of you who are familiar with like Pledge, gauzy's heavier. It's thicker. It's kind of hard to describe. It's more milky than the Pledge is. And it seems to give a harder finish, a thicker finish when you put it on. So I thought, well, what the hell? Let's try doing that on this paint job. See if it'll give it a good clear coat. I was really happy with the Duplicolor paint. The way it turned out was a pretty close match for the original paint. And I probably should, I kind of look back on these builds, and I after I finish them, I try and critique them, try and figure out things I can do better in the future. And Lee recently, Time Rider, recently mentioned, I don't know if it was in his live chat coffee segments he's done where he chats about builds, or if it was in one of his regular videos with the bench. But he mentioned things that he sees, and one of the things is with the Spectraflame paints that people probably, he's seen situations where the body needs to be polished more. Because if I remember right, he says basically every little flaw or darkness in the metal shows right through on the paint. And I kind of see that on this. That happened with this one, where I kind of wish I would have polished it more before I put this Duplicolor paint on. But it was interesting. So back to the video. The glass wasn't in great condition on this one, but I polished it up with Flitz which seems to work really well for me to get out some basic little problems, not heavy gouges or anything like that, but just to clean it up. And then I got the polish off of there, off camera. I washed it, got it nice and clean after doing the polishing. And then I dunked it in the gauzy. And again, I love the coat that gauzy gives. And it turns the glass fantastic. But, I'm trying to do a restoration on this one. And, like I said, I don't typically do restorations. But in this case, it's not like I have a whole bunch of Corgi Junior wheels laying around. For that matter, as you know, I don't have red lines laying around to replace red line wheels, which is why I have the little used to be a red line playlist. So what I thought I'd do on these little Corgi wheels is use the Molotov pin to make the chrome shine on these little guys. I did use Nuln Oil as a black wash over the wheels, the tires themselves, before I did this. And use the helping hands there to hold them. I did try and strip the chrome off the interior. That didn't work well, so I just shot it with black paint, which, I know that's not a true restoration, but it looks good, black. And then I used the Molotov pin again to chrome the engine. And then the tires, again, what I ended up doing with the wheels and tires, speaking of which, now that's Pledge. That's the Pledge Refresh or Restore, whatever it's called, floor polish, which is a lot lighter. It's not as heavy as gauzy is. So I thought that'd probably be best to dunk the wheels in there to give them a little bit better look. Again, these are just the beat to hell wheels that were on there. I tried to make them look as good as I could. I don't have a replacement set of wheels for this. I don't know if you can get them. With the world the way it is now and the internet, I'm sure if you Google it, sure as hell there's probably a set of Corgi wheels out there that are a direct replacement for this and they look brand new. I didn't do that. So you work with what you got. And in this case, this is what I got. So, I polished up the base. I made the tires and wheels look as good as I could. And then it was time to put it all back together. And boy, that was fun. Because as I mentioned before, it has this it's just weird the way the axles are held in place. And I didn't want to cheat and throw an axle tube in here or just, somehow glue down those wheels. I took out a chunk of film here before this. I made that look easy, that one going in. What you didn't see was the roughly 5 minutes of bitching and moaning and screaming that happened before that as I was trying to get that axle in there. Me trying to do it in the front and then getting pissed off, flipping it around, figuring, maybe it'll go easier in the back side of the car, and no. And anyhow, it's in there. And so here you see me fighting the front a little bit. So yeah, it was just a bear to get these wheels in there. But I didn't want to cheat and not go the restoration route. So there we have it. I got those in. You can kind of see the wire there that's holding it in place. The Pledge is pretty light, so the wheels still roll. They roll great. If I had done that with gauzy, as heavy as gauzy is, I don't know how well those wheels would turn. I imagine you'd be able to break them loose, but the Pledge coating is a lot lighter, and I knew I could dip it in that, and I wouldn't have any friction problems with the wheels. Flip that little guy over. The glass turned out great. There's not a lot to this. It's a freaking little mini. And I don't know if I mentioned this at the start, but up at the top left of the screen early on, you might have seen it. the hashtag no mini left behind. And that was something that would be posted on Instagram when I'd upload the pictures of the minis. There'd always be someone making a comment about that. Hashtag no mini left behind. And I thought that was kind of cute. So this is another one in that series of no minis left behind. As I mentioned before, there aren't typical posts on this thing. There's just those weird little forked tongue pieces of metal. And I sure wasn't going to pound on this thing to try and spread those back apart. It was hell getting this thing apart in the first place, and I wasn't going to take a hammer and somehow try and wedge those things. So, yep, I just used the CA glue, put a little tiny dab of it on both ends, held it in place, and then I didn't want to spray the accelerator on there. Just because, I don't know, sometimes that stuff is weird and oily, and depending upon what you're doing, it works fine, but I don't like the thought of getting it on the paint. I can't say I've ever seen it do any damage or anything, but yeah, you can. I didn't realize so much of my head was in this video. Yep, I'm looking at this thing from every angle, apparently. God. I don't know why that makes me think of Mr. T. I pity the fool. And George Hodges, his Mr. T in the background of his videos. That's a kind of a shout out to you with that, George. So you can see this little thing rolls like hell. Love it. So here's where we started. I didn't try and recreate the stickers or anything like that because I don't have that stuff. Didn't feel like trying to track it down. Yeah, I'm old and crotchety, I guess, but here's where we started. Here's where we finished. And for those of you who were curious, like what that coating would look like on a paint job, well, there you have it. It turned out pretty shiny. I think the wheels turned out okay. That obviously, if there were replacement wheels, they could have been better. I didn't want to paint any of the details on there because the original did not have those painted. And as hard as it is to believe that I'm trying to do a restoration, I'm trying to do a restoration. The only things that are really different between the original and this, the interior was gold, and now it's black. I sprayed it flat black. And stickers aren't there. But otherwise, this is my shot at a restoration. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Those of you who subscribe, I really appreciate that you've done it. And if you're not a subscriber, please join up. Thank you for watching. See y'all in the next one. Take care.